My wife said 8 words that ended our marriage. She said them on a Tuesday evening, standing in our living room with her purse slung over her shoulder and her car keys already in her hand. She said them calmly, almost bored, like she was commenting on the weather or declining dessert. You don't deserve to know where I go at night. Not, it's personal. Not, I need some space. Not even, mind your own business. She said I didn't deserve to know. Then she walked out the door. I sat on our couch, the one we'd picked out together 3 years ago, arguing good-naturedly about leather versus fabric, and stared at the space where she'd been standing. The air still held a trace of her perfume, expensive perfume, the kind she only wore for special occasions. It was Tuesday. There were no special occasions on Tuesday. I looked at my watch, 9:47 p.m. I looked at my phone, no messages, no explanations, no be back soon. I looked at our wedding photo on the mantel. Julia in white, me in my tux, both of us grinning like idiots who thought love was enough. That was 5 years ago. 5 years, 3 months, and 16 days ago, to be exact. And somewhere in those 5 years, the woman I married had become a stranger who believed I didn't deserve answers. I sat there for another 13 minutes, doing the mental math that every betrayed spouse does, adding up the signs, the late-night errands, the guarded phone, the sleeping with her back to me, the perfume at 10 p.m., the vague explanations that were somehow both too detailed and completely empty. Just running to the store. Meeting an old friend for coffee. Had to handle something for work. At 10 p.m., at 11 p.m., sometimes at midnight? Who meets old friends for coffee at midnight? I'd been telling myself I was paranoid, insecure, that marriage meant trust, and trust meant not questioning every unexplained absence. But as I sat on that couch, staring at the closed door, I realized something important. I wasn't paranoid. I was right. And tomorrow night, I was going to prove it. It had started a month ago, 5 weeks actually. I could name the exact Thursday if someone pressed me, could flip back through my mental calendar like pulling a worn page from a notebook. But I tried not to. I tried not to be the kind of husband who cataloged every unusual moment, who replayed conversations like evidence, who became a detective in his own home. But the truth is, I remembered. Of course, I remembered. Before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe, and hit hype to boost this episode. Drop a comment below with your city or country. I'm always curious where viewers are joining from. It was a Thursday in late March, the kind of evening where the sky hangs between winter and spring, pale and indecisive. Julia had walked through the front door at her usual 6:15 p.m., not 6:10, not 6:20. She was punctual in a way that sometimes annoyed me and sometimes reassured me, depending on the day. She had been a project manager at her consulting firm for 3 years, and she ran her life the same way she ran her teams. Neat, structured, predictable. That's what I used to love most about her. That she was steady, reliable, the person I never had to doubt. She kissed me hello, slid her heels off with that tired sigh she always made, asked about my day, laughed at something I said, and started making dinner while humming along to a playlist she'd heard 1,000 times. Everything was so familiar, it almost faded into background noise. It felt normal. And then, at 9:30 p.m., while we were sitting in the living room, half watching a show, she suddenly looked up from her phone, like a notification had just thrown a stone through her thoughts. I need to run an errand, she said abruptly. Be back in an hour. At 9:30, I asked, surprised but trying not to sound suspicious. Yeah. She grabbed her purse without meeting my eyes. Just something I forgot to handle. Won't take long. She was out the door before I could ask what kind of errand happened after 9 p.m. on a weekday. We weren't the kind of couple who ran spontaneous night errands. She wasn't that type of person. She returned at 11:45 p.m., more than 2 hours later. Everything okay? I'd asked carefully. Fine, she'd said. Just took longer than I thought. That was it. No details, no explanation, not even a flimsy excuse. Just fine. I let it go because I told myself it was a one-time thing, because marriages survive by choosing which hills not to die on, because I didn't want to look like the possessive husband who freaks out if his wife leaves the house without a permission slip. But inside, something lodged itself into place, a tiny stone of discomfort, and once it was there, I couldn't unfeel it. 2 days later, Saturday night, the same thing happened. 10 p.m. She stood up, already grabbing her keys. I need to step out for a bit. This time, she didn't even bother coming up with a reason. I watched her walk out, watched her taillights disappear down the street, and tried to swallow the sinking feeling that rose inside me like cold water. She came back at 12:30 a.m., 2.5 hours. She smelled like night air and perfume, the wrong perfume. Too sweet, too heavy, not the scent she wore for work. Sunday, nothing. Monday, nothing. Tuesday, 9:45 p.m. She grabbed her purse again, so casually as if late-night departures had always been a normal part of our marriage. She didn't announce where she was going. She didn't say when she'd be back. She came home at 1 a.m., and at that point, pretending not to see the pattern felt ridiculous. But I tried. God knows I tried. I approached her gently, like handling fragile glass. "Hey," I said one evening, "I've noticed you've been going out at night a lot. Is everything okay?" She didn't even look up from her laptop. "Everything's fine." "Is it work stuff? Because if you need to talk, it's handled, Mark." Sharp. Dismissive. "Don't worry about it." "I'm not worried," I insisted softly. "Just curious. We used to talk about everything, and stop acting insecure." That shut me up instantly, because nothing kills a man's voice faster than being told he's insecure. It's not an accusation. It's a humiliation. It paints you as the jealous husband, the controlling partner, the guy whose own fears make him suspicious. So I stopped asking, but I didn't stop noticing. Noticing became my new job, one I didn't want, one I didn't apply for, but one I couldn't quit. I noticed she came home from these errands and immediately took a shower. Even if she had showered before leaving, she'd practically run upstairs and turn on the water before even saying goodnight. I noticed her phone, the phone that used to live openly on the coffee table, on the kitchen counter, on her nightstand, and now followed her everywhere. She wouldn't leave it in the same room as me. If she walked into the bathroom, the phone came with her. If she went to take the trash out, it stayed tucked in her coat pocket. I noticed she changed her passcode. Without a word, without a laugh, without a, "Hey, I updated this." We used to know each other's codes, not to snoop, just because trust made it irrelevant. If my phone rang while I was cooking, she'd answer it for me. If her phone buzzed during a show, I'd read her the message so she didn't have to pause anything. Now her phone was a vault. I noticed she started sleeping facing the wall, curled up tight, as if creating distance even in her dreams. We used to fall asleep talking, our legs tangled, our hands brushing. Now there was a full ocean of space between us. I noticed she bought new lingerie, expensive, delicate pieces she tucked into the back of her drawer under gym shorts and pajamas. She didn't wear lingerie for me, not anymore. I noticed she wore perfume at night, before running errands. She'd spray twice, check herself in the mirror, grab her keys, and leave. I noticed she stopped touching me, stopped reaching for my hand, stopped leaning against me on the couch, stopped brushing past me in the hallway with that soft smile she used to have. I noticed our sex life dried out like a riverbed. Not gradually, abruptly. 3 weeks without intimacy. 3 weeks of excuses that didn't match the late-night energy she suddenly had. 3 weeks of her saying she was tired, but she wasn't too tired to leave at 10 p.m. I noticed every piece of this puzzle, even when I pretended I wasn't collecting them, and the worst part? I think I knew. Deep down, from the moment she first said, "I need to run an errand," I knew. Noticing wasn't the problem. Noticing was the truth trying to speak. And I just wasn't ready to hear it. I spent that entire month telling myself stories, little narratives I stitched together in my head to keep myself sane, to keep myself from looking too closely at the truth that sat in the corner of every room like a dark shape I wasn't ready to confront. Maybe she was planning a surprise for me. That was my first theory, the hopeful one, the one where everything had a sweet explanation and all these late-night disappearances were building towards something meaningful. Maybe she was working on some big gesture, something she wanted to keep secret until the perfect moment. Except my birthday wasn't coming up. It was in October, still half a year away. Our anniversary was in June, too far, too pointless to prepare for now. And Julia wasn't the type to plan that far in advance for sentimental holidays. She liked meaningful moments, not grand productions. Still, I told myself the story anyway. Maybe she'd taken up a hobby she was embarrassed about. Maybe she joined a late-night pottery studio or a painting group or a local dance class she didn't want to mention until she felt confident. Julia had always been careful about looking foolish. She didn't like to share things until she felt she was good enough at them. So maybe she was exploring something new and needed privacy. But that didn't explain why she came home smelling like someone else's perfume, or why she showered immediately, or why she hid her phone like it carried national secrets. So I tried a different story. Maybe she was helping a friend through a crisis. Julia was the kind of person people confided in. Maybe one of her friends was dealing with a messy divorce, or a partner who'd become abusive, or a health scare, or a panic spiral that needed late-night hand-holding. Midnight emergencies weren't unheard of. But then why wouldn't she say that? Why wouldn't she at least tell me, I'm helping someone who needs me? She wasn't heartless. She wouldn't hide something like that without a reason. Maybe she was in therapy. Maybe she was dealing with something internal, depression, anxiety, burnout, and she couldn't bring herself to talk to me about it yet. Late-night sessions with a therapist? Unusual, but not impossible. Maybe there were after-hours appointments for clients who needed privacy. That explanation almost made sense. Almost. But therapy didn't require perfume. It didn't require lingerie. It didn't require secrecy. And therapy didn't demand she tell me I didn't deserve to know. Then I turned to work. Maybe it was work. Something high stakes. A difficult client. Some merger or project or crisis that required late-night planning sessions. I'd heard stories before, teams staying late to hit impossible deadlines, managers sneaking away to field calls at odd hours. But work didn't require showering at midnight. Work didn't need a changed passcode. Work didn't make her turn her back to me in bed, like sharing a pillow was suddenly unbearable. Still, I forced myself to consider every explanation that made her innocent. Maybe, maybe, maybe. I clung to maybe like a man hanging from the last rung of a collapsing ladder, refusing to let the ground rise up to meet him. But none of those stories fit. None of them explained the perfume, the kind she didn't wear for me, the kind she didn't wear to the office, the kind she only put on before disappearing into the night. None explained the new lingerie she bought and hid, not lingerie she wore for me, lingerie I'd never even seen except by accident when the drawer was half open one morning. None explained why she wouldn't tell me anything, why she'd shut down every attempt I made to talk, why she'd get defensive, aggressive, almost irritated that I even noticed she was leaving the house at all. And none explained the worst sentence she'd thrown at me. You don't deserve to know. That was the key, the center, the single phrase that cracked everything open. Because even if she was planning something for later, even if she was helping someone, even if she was dealing with personal issues she wasn't ready to share, she could have said that much. She could have said, I'm working on something, but I promise I'll tell you soon. Or, I'm dealing with something personal. Please just give me space. Or, it's not what you think. Just trust me. Anything. Anything except the sentence she chose. You don't deserve to know. Not, you'll know eventually. Not, please give me time. Not, I'm not ready to talk. No. She chose the one sentence that made it clear this wasn't about timing or vulnerability or privacy. It was about entitlement. Her entitlement. Her belief that I had lost the right to be included. Her belief that the marriage contract, the one built on trust and openness and respect, no longer applied to me. It meant she didn't think she owed me an explanation at all. It meant she no longer saw me as a partner. It meant she no longer viewed us as a we. It meant she had already checked out. Emotionally, she had left the marriage long before her body ever walked out the door at 9:30 p.m. I knew all this. On some subconscious level, I understood it perfectly. I saw the pieces fitting together, the picture becoming clearer each day. But knowing wasn't the same as accepting. Because accepting the truth meant acknowledging that my marriage wasn't slipping. It was gone. That the woman who used to kiss me goodnight had already emotionally moved into another life, one I wasn't part of. And I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready to lose her. I wasn't ready to admit I'd been replaced. I wasn't ready to accept that everything we built had crumbled while I was still holding the blueprint. So instead of accepting the truth, I told myself another story. That maybe, somehow, I was wrong. 2 weeks before the final night, Julia mentioned someone named David. We were having dinner, one of the increasingly rare evenings when we actually ate together at home. She was distracted, picking at her food, checking her phone every few minutes. Who's David? I asked, trying to sound casual. She looked up, startled. What? David, you just smiled at your phone. Figured it must be someone interesting. Oh, just an old coworker. He reached out about a project. From which job? My first firm, before I moved to Spectrum. That would have been 6 or 7 years ago, before we'd even met. That's nice. You guys staying in touch? Not really, just work stuff. Hey, can you pass the salt? Subject changed. Conversation over. I didn't think much of it at the time. Or rather, I tried not to think much of it. But the name stuck in my head. David. Old coworker. Before we met. I told myself not to be paranoid. People reconnect with old coworkers all the time. It was normal, professional. Nothing to worry about. But then, 3 days later, I saw his name on her phone screen. She'd left her phone on the bathroom counter while she was in the shower. I wasn't snooping, I was brushing my teeth. The phone was right there, screen facing up. A text notification popped up. David, can't wait to see you tonight. I stared at it for a long moment. Can't wait to see you tonight. Not, looking forward to our meeting. Not, see you at the office. Not, talk to you later. Can't wait to see you tonight. The language of anticipation, of eagerness, of something personal, not professional. I heard the shower turn off. I finished brushing my teeth and left the bathroom before Julia came out. I didn't mention the text. I didn't ask about David again. But that night, when she grabbed her keys at 10:15 p.m. and said she had to take care of something, I knew exactly what she was taking care of. Or rather, who. After Julia left on that Tuesday night, after she told me I didn't deserve to know where she went, I made a decision. I was going to find out. Not by hacking her phone or hiring a private investigator or any of the dramatic things people do in movies, just by following her. Simple, direct, effective. I spent Wednesday preparing. First, I checked my car, made sure it had gas, that the headlights worked, that there was nothing that would make it conspicuous or unreliable. I cleaned the windshield so I could see clearly. I cleared out the passenger seat so I could move my phone or camera there if needed. Second, I prepared my phone, charged it fully, cleared storage space for photos and videos, made sure location services were on in case I needed to track where we went, downloaded a voice recorder app as backup. Third, I thought through the logistics. How far back should I stay? Far enough not to be noticed, close enough not to lose her. What if she took an unexpected route? I'd have to adapt. What if she saw me? I'd have to have an excuse ready, though at that point, the confrontation would just be happening sooner. Fourth, I prepared myself mentally. This was either going to confirm my worst suspicions or prove me wrong. Either way, I needed to be ready for what I found. If I was wrong, if Julia was really just meeting a friend, or taking a late-night exercise class, or doing something completely innocent, I'd apologize. I'd admit I'd been paranoid and work on our trust issues together. But if I was right, I needed to be ready to see things I couldn't unsee, to know things I couldn't unknow, to watch my marriage end in real time. I went to work on Thursday, tried to act normal, answered emails, attended meetings, made small talk with coworkers, all while my mind was elsewhere, running through scenarios, preparing for the evening. Julia came home at her usual time, 6:15 p.m. "Hey," she said, dropping her bag on the counter. "Hey, how was your day?" "Fine. Yours?" "Busy. I'm exhausted." But not too exhausted to go out later, I thought. We made dinner together, pasta with marinara sauce. We ate mostly in silence, the TV playing some forgettable show in the background. Julia checked her phone constantly. At 9:30 p.m., she stood up. "I need to run out for a bit." My heart started pounding. This was it. "Okay," I said, keeping my voice level. "Drive safe." She grabbed her purse, her keys, and left without another word. No kiss goodbye, no estimated time of return, no acknowledgement that leaving your husband alone at 9:30 p.m. without explanation might be unusual. Just gone. I waited 15 minutes, counted them down on my watch, each second stretching out like an hour. At the 15-minute mark, I stood up, grabbed my jacket, checked my phone was in my pocket, took my keys from the hook by the door, and followed my wife into the night. Julia's car was easy to spot, a silver Lexus SUV that she loved more than she probably loved me at this point. I caught up to her at the first traffic light, 3 cars back, close enough to keep her in sight, far enough not to be obvious. The light turned green. She turned right onto the main road heading out of our neighborhood. I followed. For the first 10 minutes, I told myself she might be going to the grocery store, or the pharmacy, or literally anywhere that would make this all feel ridiculous and paranoid. But she passed the grocery store. She passed the pharmacy. She passed every normal destination and kept driving, heading toward the highway. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. She merged onto I-95 North. I followed, keeping 2 cars between us. The highway was relatively empty at this hour, enough traffic that I wasn't conspicuous, but not so much that I could lose her in the crowd. I turned off my radio. I needed to focus. Needed to pay attention to every turn signal, every lane change, every sign that would tell me where we were going. We drove for 20 minutes, past exit after exit, past shopping centers and office parks and residential areas, further and further from anything familiar. Where the hell was she going? At the Rockwell Avenue exit, her turn signal came on. I stayed back, let another car get between us, then followed onto the exit ramp. Now we were in an area I didn't know well. Industrial. Lots of warehouses and storage facilities. The kind of place that's busy during the day and deserted at night. The kind of place you go when you don't want to be seen. Julia's car turned left, then right, navigating through empty streets with the confidence of someone who'd made this drive before. many times before. I kept my distance, turning off my headlights whenever possible, using the ambient light from street lamps and the occasional security light to follow her taillights. My heart was hammering now. Whatever was about to happen, it was happening soon. She turned into a parking lot behind a large, dark warehouse, one of those nameless industrial buildings with no identifying marks, no signs, just a street address that probably no one but delivery drivers knew. I drove past the entrance, found a spot on the street about 50 yards away where I could see the parking lot but wouldn't be immediately visible. I parked, killed my engine, and watched. Julia's Lexus sat in the middle of the empty lot, engine running, headlights on. She was waiting. For what? For whom? I pulled out my phone, opened the camera app, and zoomed in as much as possible. The quality wouldn't be great from this distance, but it would be something. Evidence. Proof. Proof of what, though? My wife was sitting in a parking lot. That wasn't a crime. That wasn't even necessarily suspicious. But then I saw the second vehicle. A black SUV, Land Rover looked like, pulled into the parking lot from the opposite entrance. It drove slowly across the pavement and parked directly next to Julia's car. Passenger side to passenger side. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out. Even from this distance, even in the dim light, I could see he was tall, well-dressed, confident in his movements. He walked around the front of his vehicle and approached Julia's passenger window. She rolled it down. They talked for a moment. I couldn't hear anything, couldn't read lips from this far away, but I could see their body language. Familiar. Easy. Not the tentative interaction of old coworkers reconnecting. This was practiced. Routine. Then Julia's door opened. She stepped out of her car and walked straight into his arms. I stopped breathing. Actually stopped breathing, like my lungs had forgotten how to function. Because I was watching my wife, the woman I'd vowed to love and honor, the woman who'd promised me the same, embrace another man in a dark parking lot at 10:30 at night. It wasn't a friendly hug. It wasn't a professional handshake that turned into a brief embrace. It wasn't anything innocent. His arms went around her waist. Her arms went around his neck. Their bodies pressed together, no space between them, holding the embrace for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds. When they finally pulled apart, his hands stayed on her hips. Her hands rested on his chest. They stood like that, facing each other, talking. Intimate, private. The posture of people who'd done this before, many times before. I raised my phone with shaking hands and started recording. The video quality was terrible, too dark, too far away, grainy and pixelated, but it was clear enough to show my wife in the arms of another man, clear enough to show that she'd driven 30 minutes to this deserted location for a reason, clear enough to end our marriage. But it got worse, because then Julia reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope, thick, white, stuffed with something. She handed it to the man. David, I assumed. Had to be David. He took it, opened it, flipped through whatever was inside. Even from here, I could tell it was cash. Bills, multiple bills, thick enough that the envelope could barely close. He nodded, said something, and tucked the envelope into his jacket pocket. What the hell was I watching? This wasn't just an affair. Affairs didn't involve cash exchanges in parking lots. Affairs were hotel rooms and secret apartments and hushed phone calls. This was something else, something transactional, something planned. David reached back into his SUV and pulled out a small bag. Dark, maybe leather. He handed it to Julia. She took it, looked inside, and smiled. They talked for another minute, then embraced again. This time, he kissed the top of her head. She leaned into him, her body language speaking volumes about their comfort with each other. Then she pulled out her phone, took a photo of something, maybe the bag's contents, maybe a document he'd shown her, and brought her phone to her lips. Not kissing it exactly, but touching it to her mouth like it was a talisman or a ritual. Finally, they separated. Julia got back into her car. David got into his SUV. They left the parking lot from opposite exits, disappearing into the night in different directions. I sat in my car for another 5 minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. Then I drove home. I got home at 11:45 p.m. The house was empty, dark. Julia wasn't back yet. Good. I needed time to think, to process, to figure out what the hell I'd just witnessed. I went to my home office, the spare bedroom we'd converted into a workspace, and sat down at my desk. Opened my laptop, plugged in my phone, watched the video 3 times. Each time, it felt more surreal, like I was watching actors in a movie, not my actual wife conducting some kind of secret transaction with a man she'd claimed barely existed, but it was real. It had happened. I had proof. I opened Google Photos and started pulling up images from Julia's phone that had automatically synced to our shared family account, a feature we'd set up years ago for convenience, back when we trusted each other, back when the thought of needing evidence against your spouse was absurd. Scrolled back through the last month. Most of the photos were innocent, work documents, food, the cat, selfies. But then I found something interesting. A photo from 3 weeks ago, taken at 11:47 p.m. according to the timestamp. The photo itself was innocent, a blurry image of city lights from a car window, but the location data told a different story. Rockwell Industrial Park, the same area where I'd just followed her. I scrolled further back. Found another photo from the same location, different date, another from 2 weeks before that. She'd been going there for at least a month, probably longer. I checked her Google Maps history, also synced to our shared account because, again, we'd thought we were a team that shared everything. The location appeared over and over, every Tuesday and Saturday for the past 5 weeks. Before that, the pattern was less regular, but it was still there. Once a week, sometimes twice. 3 months of trips to that parking lot. 3 months of meeting David. 3 months of whatever the hell this was. I took screenshots of everything. The video, the photos, the location history. Every piece of evidence that proved Julia hadn't just been going out for innocent errands. Then I did something I'd promised myself I'd never do. I accessed our bank records. We had a joint checking account that we both used, plus individual savings accounts for personal spending. I'd never looked at Julia's savings account, never had a reason to. That was her money, her business. But now I had a reason. I logged into our bank's website using the credentials we'd set up for managing household finances, navigated to her personal savings account, and found the first real answer. Over the past 3 months, Julia had withdrawn $43,000 in cash. Not checks, not transfers. Cash withdrawals, ranging from $500 to $3,000 each, made every week or two. $43,000. Where the hell had that money gone? We made decent money. I was a software engineer. She was a project manager. Combined income around $180,000 a year. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable. We had savings. We could afford our lifestyle. But $43,000 in 3 months? That was significant. That was someone's salary. That was a down payment on a car. That was the kind of money you withdraw when you're paying for something you don't want traced. Or someone. I pulled up her credit card statements next. More carefully than the bank records, because she'd be notified if I logged into her personal credit account. But our shared Amazon account showed recent orders. New lingerie, $380, expensive perfume, $210, a designer handbag, $200, all ordered in the past month. All things she'd said nothing about. All things, I realized with a sick feeling, that she was probably wearing or using when she went to meet David. I printed everything, bank statements, location history, screenshots of the video, credit card receipts. I compiled it into a folder, organizing it chronologically, building a case like a lawyer preparing for trial. Because that's what this was going to become, a trial, a divorce. The end of everything I'd thought my life was. At 1:30 a.m., I heard a car pull into the driveway. Julia was home. I had about 90 seconds before Julia walked through the door. 90 seconds to decide, confront her now, or wait. I chose wait. Not because I was a coward, though maybe I was, but because I wanted to do this right. I wanted to leave no room for her to gaslight me, to convince me I'd misunderstood what I'd seen, to spin some story that would make me doubt my own eyes. I wanted documentation, legal documentation, divorce papers drafted by an attorney, not emotional accusations thrown in the heat of the moment. I closed my laptop, grabbed my phone, and went downstairs just as Julia's key turned in the lock. She came in looking tired but satisfied, hair slightly messy, makeup faded, still wearing that expensive perfume. "Hey," she said, "you're still up." "Couldn't sleep. You?" "Just needed some air. Took a drive." A drive. That's what we were calling it now. "Feel better?" I asked, my voice carefully neutral. "Yeah, actually. Sometimes you just need to clear your head, you know?" "I know." She kissed me on the cheek, a perfunctory gesture, muscle memory more than affection, and headed upstairs. I'm exhausted, going to shower and crash. Of course she was going to shower, because she'd just been in another man's arms and probably smelled like him. "Night," I said. "Night." I listened to her footsteps on the stairs, the bathroom door closing, the shower turning on, and I went back to my office to finish what I'd started. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. My mind was racing, running through scenarios, planning next steps, trying to understand what I'd witnessed. At 6 a.m., I was on my laptop researching divorce attorneys. At 8 a.m., I was on the phone with a family law firm that had excellent reviews and a reputation for aggressive representation. Henderson and Associates, how may I direct your call? I need to speak with a divorce attorney as soon as possible. Of course, sir. Let me connect you with our intake coordinator. 15 minutes later, I had an appointment for 10 a.m. that same day. I told Julia I was going into the office early. She barely looked up from her coffee. Okay, I might be late tonight. Another errand. The words came out sharper than I intended. She looked at me, her expression unreadable. Yeah, another errand. Problem? No problem. Good. I left before I said something I couldn't take back. The law office was in a downtown high-rise, all glass and steel and professional competence. I rode the elevator to the 14th floor and was greeted by a receptionist who led me to a conference room. 5 minutes later, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and sharper suit walked in. Mr. Whitman, I'm Catherine Henderson. Tell me why you're here. I told her everything. The late-night absences, the changed behavior, the parking lot meeting, the cash exchange, the $43,000 in withdrawals, all of it. She listened without interrupting, taking notes on a legal pad. When I finished, she looked up. Do you have evidence? I pulled out my phone and showed her the video. She watched it twice, her expression never changing. This is good, she said. This is very good. The cash exchange is particularly interesting. Do you know what she was paying him for? No idea. We'll need to find out. It could be relevant to the divorce, depending on whether she was using marital assets for this purpose. She set down her phone. Mr. Whitman, I'm going to be direct with you. Based on what you've shown me, you have grounds for divorce. Infidelity is not required in California. We're a no-fault state. But evidence of hidden financial activity using joint funds could impact property division. What do you recommend? File immediately. We'll draft the petition today, have you review it, and submit it to the court by end of week. We'll also need to secure your financial assets, freeze joint accounts, separate credit cards, document everything. If she's been withdrawing large amounts of cash, we need to ensure she can't clean out your accounts before the divorce is final. Can she fight this? She can. Most people do. But with this evidence, she gestured to my phone. She'd be fighting from a very weak position. How long will this take? In California, minimum 6 months from filing to finalization. Could be longer if she contests property division. But Mr. Whitman, I need you to understand something. This is going to be painful. Divorce is always painful. Even when you know it's the right choice, even when you have evidence, it still hurts. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Julia's face in that parking lot, the way she'd walked into David's arms, the envelope of cash, the 3 months of lies. I'm prepared, I said. Good, then let's get started. I spent Friday preparing for what I knew would be the end. Catherine Henderson and her team worked fast. By 3 p.m., I had a draft of the divorce petition. By 5 p.m., it was finalized and ready to file. We'd submit it Monday morning, but I'd have the papers ready to serve Julia over the weekend. I also followed Catherine's advice about securing assets. I transferred half of our joint checking account, my half, into a new individual account. I removed my name from our shared credit cards. I changed passwords on my personal accounts. I wasn't trying to screw Julia over. I was protecting myself from being screwed over. Because if she'd been withdrawing $43,000 without telling me, who knew what else she might do when she realized the marriage was ending? I also packed a suitcase. Catherine had recommended I be the one to leave the house, at least initially. It would look better in court, the wronged spouse removing himself from a difficult situation rather than forcing his wayward wife out onto the street. I didn't care about optics. I just wanted out. By 7 p.m., everything was ready. The suitcase sat in my car trunk. The divorce papers sat on the kitchen table. The evidence, printed photos, bank statements, location history, sat in a folder next to the papers. All I needed was for Julia to come home so I could leave. She arrived at 8:30 p.m., later than usual. She must have gone straight from work to wherever she really went on these errands. She walked in looking distracted, checking her phone, barely acknowledging my presence. Hey, she said absently, we need to talk. Something in my voice made her look up. About what? About where you've been going at night. Her expression hardened. I thought we covered this. You don't get to interrogate me about... I followed you, I interrupted. Last night. I followed you to that parking lot behind the warehouse on Rockwell Avenue. The color drained from her face. Mark, I saw you meet him, David, the old coworker who supposedly barely exists. I saw you embrace him. I saw you give him money. I recorded the whole thing. She opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. It's not what you think. Then what is it, Julia? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been having an affair, paying him with our money and lying to me about it for months. It's not an affair. Then what is it? She looked trapped, cornered, desperate. It's complicated. I can explain if you just... I don't want explanations. I want you to leave. What? I picked up the folder from the table and handed it to her. Everything's in there. Video of last night, bank statements showing the withdrawals, location history proving you've been going there for months, credit card receipts for the things you've been buying with our shared money without telling me. She opened the folder with shaking hands, flipped through the pages, and went even paler. Mark, please, just let me explain. There's nothing to explain. I know enough. You don't. You don't understand the whole situation. I understand that my wife has been lying to me for months. I understand that she's been meeting another man in secret. I understand that she's been spending our money on something she won't tell me about. That's all I need to understand. I was going to tell you. When? After you'd drained our accounts? After you'd left me for him? I'm not leaving you for him. It's not like that. Then what is it like, Julia? Explain it to me. Make it make sense. She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, trying to find words that didn't exist. Because there were no words that would make this okay. I picked up the divorce papers and placed them on top of the evidence folder. I'm filing for divorce. You'll be served officially on Monday, but I wanted you to have a copy now. No. No, Mark. You can't. I can. I am. Our marriage is over. Please, just give me a chance to explain. It's not what you think. It's really not. You're right, I said quietly. It's worse. Because even if you're not having an affair, even if there's some other explanation, you chose to lie to me. You chose to sneak around. You chose to tell me I didn't deserve to know what you were doing. You destroyed our marriage just as much as if you'd slept with him? Tears were running down her face now. Real tears, maybe, or tactical tears. I couldn't tell anymore. Couldn't trust anything about her anymore. Mark, I love you. You don't love me. You love what I provide. Security, stability, someone to come home to while you live your secret life. But that's not love, Julia. That's convenience. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? My voice rose despite my attempts to stay calm. Was it fair to lie to me for months? Was it fair to spend our money without telling me? Was it fair to look me in the eye every morning and pretend everything was fine? She had no answer for that. I picked up my keys from the counter. I'm leaving. The house is yours until the divorce is settled. Then we'll figure out who gets what. My attorney will be in touch. Wait, where are you going? I got a hotel room. I'll be staying there until I find an apartment. Mark, please, don't do this. We can work through this. There's nothing to work through. You made your choices. Now I'm making mine. I walked toward the door. She followed, still crying, still pleading. I can explain everything. Just give me one chance. Please, just one. I turned around at the threshold. You said I didn't deserve to know where you go at night. Remember? She went silent. Well, now you don't deserve to have me stay. I walked out, got in my car, drove away from the house we'd bought together, the life we'd built together, the future we'd planned together. And I didn't look back. Over the next 72 hours, Julia called me 47 times. I know because I counted. Each call went to voicemail. Each voicemail was some variation of the same desperate message. Mark, please pick up. I can explain everything. You have to let me tell you the truth. It's not what you think. I know I messed up, but we can fix this. Please just talk to me. I'm begging you. Don't throw away 5 years over a misunderstanding. I didn't answer any of them. Didn't listen to the voicemails after the first few. Didn't respond to the texts that came in between the calls. Because there was nothing she could say that would change what I'd seen. Nothing that would explain away the lies, the secrecy, the betrayal. On Sunday evening, she showed up at my hotel. I don't know how she found me. Maybe she tracked my credit card. Maybe she called every hotel in the area. Doesn't matter. She was there, in the lobby, waiting when I came back from dinner. Julia? Please, 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. 5 minutes to explain. She looked terrible. No makeup, hair pulled back, wearing sweatpants and one of my old college hoodies. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying. Part of me wanted to walk away, to refuse to engage, to maintain the boundaries I'd set. But another part of me, the part that had loved this woman for 5 years, that had promised to love her for life, needed to hear what she had to say, even if it didn't matter, even if it didn't change anything. 5 minutes, I said. In the lobby, not in my room. We sat in uncomfortable chairs near the hotel bar. She twisted her hands in her lap, trying to find the right words. David is my brother, she said finally. I blinked. What? David. He's my half-brother, from my father's first marriage. He's 12 years older than me. Of all the explanations I'd been expecting, this wasn't one of them. You don't have a brother. I do. I never told you about him. I never told anyone about him. Why the hell not? She took a shaky breath. Because he's been in prison for the past 15 years. He got out 6 months ago on parole. The world tilted slightly. Prison, I repeated slowly. For what? Drug trafficking. He was arrested when he was 26, sentenced to 18 years, got out early for good behavior. She looked down at her hands. He was involved with some really bad people, Mark. Made terrible choices when he was young. But he's trying to turn his life around now. And the money? He's trying to start over. No criminal record will hire him for anything decent. He's working construction jobs, making minimum wage, barely getting by. I've been helping him financially, helping him get back on his feet. $43,000 worth of help? He needed a place to live. First and last month's rent, security deposit. He needed work clothes, basic furniture, a laptop so he could look for better jobs. He needed a lawyer to help navigate his parole requirements. It adds up fast. I sat there, processing this, trying to reconcile it with what I'd seen. If that's true, why didn't you tell me? Why all the secrecy? Because I was ashamed. Her voice broke. I was ashamed that I came from a family where someone went to prison, ashamed that my brother was a drug dealer, ashamed that I've been lying to everyone I know, including you, about my family for my entire adult life. Julia? My father left when I was 6. You know that? But what I didn't tell you is that he left because he got arrested, because his business was a front for drug money, because everything I thought I knew about my family was a lie. She was crying now, the words pouring out. David was part of that world. He followed in our father's footsteps, and it destroyed him, and I've spent my entire life trying to pretend I'm not connected to any of it, trying to be normal, trying to be someone who didn't come from that kind of family. Why the parking lot meetings? Why the secrecy? Because he's on parole. He can't go certain places, can't be seen in certain situations. We meet there because it's private, because nobody asks questions, because I can give him money without anyone knowing I'm associating with a convicted felon. She wiped her eyes. I know how it looked. I know what you must have thought. But I swear to you, on everything I hold sacred, I'm not having an affair. David is my brother. That's all. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. But 5 years of marriage, all that trust, had been destroyed by 3 months of lies. Why didn't you just tell me? I asked quietly. Why lie? Why make me think you were having an affair instead of just explaining that you have a brother who needed help? Because I didn't know how you'd react. I didn't know if you'd still want to be with me if you knew my family history. I didn't know if you'd judge me or leave me or... So you chose to lie instead? I chose wrong. I know I did. But I was scared, Mark. I was terrified that if you knew the truth, you'd see me differently. That you'd realize I'm not the person you thought you married. You're right, I said. You're not the person I thought I married. The person I married wouldn't have lied to me for months, wouldn't have shut me out, wouldn't have told me I didn't deserve to know what was happening in her life. I know. You don't know. You don't know what it was like, watching you pull away, feeling you become a stranger, suspecting the worst, and having no way to confirm or deny it because you wouldn't talk to me. I'm sorry. Sorry isn't enough. Trust is the foundation of marriage, Julia. Without trust, we have nothing, and you destroyed that trust. We can rebuild it. Can we? Because right now, sitting here, listening to you explain why you lied, I don't know if I can ever trust you again. How do I know this is the truth? How do I know there aren't other secrets you're hiding? How do I know that 6 months from now I won't discover something else you've been keeping from me? She had no answer for that. We sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, she said, What do we do now? I don't know. Do you want to meet him, David? Would that help? If you could see that he really is my brother, that there's nothing romantic between us, maybe. I don't know. I need time to think. The divorce papers are still being filed. Whether or not you're having an affair, Julia, you lied to me for months. You withdrew tens of thousands of dollars without discussing it with me. You told me I didn't deserve answers about your behavior. Those are marriage-ending actions. Even if I explain? Even if I apologize? I don't know. Maybe. But right now, I can't see past the betrayal. She nodded, accepting this, her shoulders slumping in defeat. I'll go, she said quietly. But Mark, I do love you. I know you don't believe me right now, but I do. and I'll do whatever it takes to prove it to you. Whatever you need." She stood up, waited as if hoping I'd stop her, then walked away when I didn't. I sat in that hotel lobby for another hour, trying to make sense of everything she'd told me, trying to decide if I believed her, trying to figure out if it even mattered. It's been 3 weeks since that night in the parking lot. 3 weeks since I followed Julia and discovered her secret. 3 weeks since I learned that sometimes the truth is more complicated than betrayal. The divorce papers are still filed. The court date is set for next month. I'm still living in a hotel while I look for an apartment. But Julia and I are talking again, carefully, tentatively, like two people trying to navigate a minefield they created together. I met David, twice. Once at a coffee shop, once at his modest apartment. He's exactly what Julia described. A man trying to rebuild his life after making terrible mistakes when he was young. He was apologetic about the secrecy, explained that he'd encouraged Julia to tell me, that he felt guilty about the strain it put on our marriage. "She's always been ashamed of me," he said during our second meeting. "Can't say I blame her. I made choices that hurt our whole family. If I'd known she was lying to you, I would have told her to come clean. You seem like a good man. She's lucky to have you." "Had me," I corrected. "Past tense." "Is it, though? Past tense?" I didn't answer, because I don't know the answer. Julia violated my trust. She lied for months. She made me doubt my own judgment, my own sanity, my own worth as a husband, but she also explained why. And while the explanation doesn't excuse the lies, it does contextualize them. It makes them understandable, if not forgivable. She's started therapy, both individual therapy to work through her shame about her family and suggested couples therapy if I'm willing. She's opened all her accounts to me. No more secrets, no more hidden transactions. She's introduced me to David properly, brought me into that part of her life she'd kept hidden. She's doing everything right. But is it enough? I don't know. I know that I still love her. That much hasn't changed. 5 years of marriage don't disappear because of 3 months of lies. But I also know that trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to rebuild. That forgiveness is a process, not a decision. That choosing to stay is choosing to live with uncertainty, to accept that I might never fully trust her again. Is that the kind of marriage I want? The divorce hearing is in 3 weeks. I have until then to decide. Move forward with the divorce or withdraw the petition and try to rebuild. Catherine Henderson thinks I should proceed. "Trust your instincts," she said. "The instincts that told you something was wrong were right. Trust them now." But my instincts are divided. Half of me says run. Protect yourself. Don't give her another chance to hurt you. The other half says stay, fight, give the woman you loved a chance to become the woman you married again. I don't know which voice to listen to, so I'm sitting here, in this hotel room, 3 weeks after the worst night of my life, trying to decide what the rest of my life looks like. With Julia, rebuilding from the ruins of broken trust, or without her, starting over alone but unbetrayed. I don't know the answer yet. But I have 3 weeks to figure it out. 3 weeks to decide if the woman who told me I didn't deserve to know where she went at night deserves another chance to earn back what she destroyed. 3 weeks to choose between forgiveness and freedom. 3 weeks to figure out if love is enough to overcome lies. I'll let you know what I decide, if I ever figure it out.